He was just a truck driver making a run through California at 2 in the morning. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong phone call. A girl's voice broke through on his brand new cell phone, terrified and barely audible. She said her name was Sandra. She said there were dead bodies all around her. She said something was coming, and then the line went dead. A smarter man would have kept driving. Dale was not that man. What he found at the end of that dirt road in the middle of the California desert was something that had no right to exist. Something that was part woman, part nightmare, and very, very hungry. This is DreadRelic. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from. I read every single one. Whether you are watching from Lagos or London, from Accra or Atlanta, from somewhere dark and wide awake at 2 in the morning, say hello. Drop your city, drop your country, and if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button before this story is over. Trust me, you will want someone nearby when the lights go out. Now, let us go in. 2:23 in the morning. California Highway 99 northbound. Dale held the phone away from his ear with one hand and kept an ironclad grip on the steering wheel of his Mack truck with the other. His ex-wife's voice was screaming out of the tiny speaker with the kind of energy most people reserve for natural disasters and major sporting events. Get your butt down here and visit your boy. You have not seen him in near a month. Dale pressed the phone flat against his thigh to muffle the sound and stared at the dark road ahead. He had picked up the cell phone less than an hour ago at a truck stop off the highway. $9.99. The man behind the counter had thrown in a box of red vines to sweeten the deal. The whole transaction had felt like a mistake from the moment he handed over the money. He brought the phone back up to his ear. Damn it, Velma. I go where the work is. You know that. Her voice cut out mid-sentence. Static crackled across the line like something tearing. And when sound returned, it was not Velma anymore. It was younger, and it was terrified. Sandra. He is going to kill us. I cannot move. Dale sat up straight in the driver's seat. Who is this? The voice broke apart and reassembled itself in fragments between waves of static, each piece arriving out of order like something being thrown at him through a wall. End of Route 194. Cave. Drag race. Raced a red spider down Route 194. Cannot move. Dead bodies all over. Dale's hand tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles went pale. He knew the feeling that came over him then. He had felt it before, more times than he could count in the years of night, driving across this country. It was the feeling of a large, ominous door swinging slowly open on tired and rusted hinges, leading toward places he never went looking for, but always seemed to find somewhere between midnight and dawn. He sighed the deep, resigned sigh of a man who knows exactly what he is about to do and is not happy about it. He pressed the phone back to his ear. I am northbound on the 99. Which way are you on the 194? East or west? Silence. Hey, Sandra, east or west? Nothing. He pulled the phone away from his ear and stared at the tiny screen. No signal. Goddamn $9 phone. Velma's voice erupted back immediately, mid-sentence, louder than ever, as though she had never stopped and could not conceive of a reason to. Dale pressed the red button and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. He sat with the silence for a long moment. staring at the highway ahead. Route 194 stretched across California for miles in both directions, and he had no details, no direction, no way to verify the girl was even still alive. The smart move was to keep the truck pointed north and let someone else be the answer to a problem he had stumbled into by accident. He knew the smart move. He reached for the CB mic. "Hey, Twilight Man, you got your ears on? Come back." Dale grinned at the voice crackling through the CB speaker. His friend Earl, somewhere out there in the California dark, sounding exactly the same as he always did at every hour of the day and night, which was deeply unbothered. He picked up the mic and keyed it. "This here is the Twilight Man. How you doing, Nightcrawler?" Earl's voice came back warm and easy. The voice of a man who had been behind a wheel so long he had forgotten what it felt like to be in a hurry about anything. He was backsliding down toward Grapevine on the rebound, aiming to make camp in Bakersfield, and he wondered if Dale wanted to gather wagons and find somewhere nearby to chew and choke for a proper breakfast. Dale glanced at his watch. midnight. "Sounds good to me," he said into the mic. "But listen, I got this call on my cell just now. Want to run it by you before I do something I know I'm going to regret." A beat of silence on the CB. Then Earl's voice, slow with theatrical disbelief. "Stop the presses right there. You got yourself a cell phone, Dale." Dale groaned. "Yes. Let us not make an event of it." Earl made an event of it. He made a very large event of it that lasted the better part of a minute, covering the historic nature of the purchase, the implications for Dale's relationship with the modern age, and several observations about penny pinching that Dale found uncomfortably accurate. Dale let him finish. Then he recapped what he had heard before the signal dropped. The girl's voice, the name Sandra, the dead bodies, the cave at the end of Route 194. When he was done, Earl went quiet for a second, which with Earl was a rare and significant event. Then he said, "That is the strangest thing I have heard all week, and I heard some strange things this week. You think it could be the mines?" Dale frowned at the windshield. "What was that?" "Come back." "Yeah, you mentioned a cave. There are old copper mines off the 194 about 2 miles west of the highway. Closed for decades, maybe longer. You remember that college kid who died spelunking out that way last year? Made the news for about a day and then everyone forgot." Dale's eyes tracked the exit signs flashing past in the headlights. He had just passed the turnoff for Route 193. 194 was a few miles ahead. "So what are you going to do, Twilight Man?" Earl's voice, steady and without judgment. Dale took a long, slow breath and let it out just as slowly. He tried to hold the smart move in his mind and keep it there. He exhaled the last of the breath. And somewhere in the silence at the bottom of it, he heard his youngest niece's voice in Knoxville. 7 years old and afraid in the dark. And the girl on the phone had sounded exactly like that. He reached forward and flicked the turn signal on. Goddamn son of something. He had known nothing good could come from buying a cell phone. He had known it the moment the man slid it across the counter toward him. $9.99, box of red vines, one catastrophic mistake. And damn if he had not been right about every single part of it. He exited onto Route 194 and turned west. His headlights cut a pair of white tunnels through the California darkness. revealing field after field of flat agricultural land on both sides of the road. Rows of crops stretching away into the dark. After 2 miles of that, the farmland simply fell away at the edges of the light, and rolling hills rose up on both sides, their surfaces pale and soft in the thin moonlight. The paved road gave way to gravel. The gravel gave way to dirt. The truck began to shake and shudder with every rut and stone, and the dust kicked up behind him in a long white plume that the mirrors turned orange in the taillights. Dale was just about to acknowledge that this had been a foolish idea and swing the rig around when his headlights caught something at the edge of their reach. A sign. Old, weathered, faded paint on salt-bleached wood. Hope Mine. Half a mile. A painted arrow pointing south onto another dirt track. He brought the truck to a stop in front of it and sat there for a moment, engine idling, studying the sign and the path beyond it. The track running south was dark and unnamed and looked like it went nowhere in particular. But the tire tracks pressed into the dirt around the sign were fresh. A dozen sets at least, maybe more, overlapping in every direction. Some of them very recent. He turned south. The new track was rougher than the first. The cab bounced and groaned over every rock and hollow, and the headlights swung up and down with each impact, turning the dark ahead into something constantly shifting. After the length of several football fields worth of slow going, the headlights began picking up reflections ahead. 1 pair of taillights, then 2, then a dozen at once, scattered across the dark like embers from a fire, flickering as the truck's beams moved across them. Cars lined the track on both sides, bumper to bumper in places. Modified street racers, all of them. Every single one of them brand new under the dust, tricked out with oversized aftermarket spoilers and chrome exhaust pipes and body kits designed to make them look like vehicles in an action film. They had come from money, these cars. Someone had spent considerable time and considerable amounts of it making each one look absurd and fast and entirely out of place on a dirt track in rural California. And every single one of them sat completely dark and completely empty. No music, no voices, no sign of anyone at all. Dale pulled alongside a racing green Acura whose rear spoiler was large enough to function as a small aircraft wing, shut the engine down, and climbed out of the cab. The night air was cold and thin and carried nothing on it. No sound anywhere except the ticking of the cooling engine behind him. Just ahead, the entrance to the Hope Mine opened up in the face of a blasted hill. It was not what he had expected. No Hollywood mine entrance with railroad ties and a dramatic painted warning sign. This was just a hole in the earth, a dark and steep hole burrowing down into the hill at an angle sharp enough to make walking difficult but not impossible. Dale stood at the edge of it for a moment, looking down. His flashlight beam disappeared into it without finding the bottom. He reached under the seat of the cab and opened a compartment so well concealed that no scale inspector, border patrol agent, DEA officer, or highway patrol would have located it without removing the seat entirely. Inside, wrapped in a cloth, was a Christmas gift from a few years back. A sawed-off double-barreled shotgun with a carved wooden handle. His mother always knew exactly what he needed. He stuffed half a dozen shells into his vest pocket, grabbed a coil of rope from behind the seat, and climbed back out. He tied one end of the rope firmly to the front bumper of the truck, He dropped the other end down into the hole and watched the darkness take it. He stood at the edge and stared down. The hair on the back of his neck was standing up and refusing to come back down. Something was looking up at him from the bottom of that hole. He could not see it, or hear it, or smell it from here, but he could feel it the way you feel a change in pressure before a storm. Cold, unfriendly, patient. "I am coming, kid," he said. He gripped the rope and began to descend. With each step down into the mine, the air got colder, and the walls got closer, and the darkness got more deliberate about itself. And then the smell hit him. Thick and sweet and wrong in a way that his body understood before his brain did. Heavy with decay and something else underneath it. Something biological and old and deeply unpleasant in a way that went beyond ordinary death. Dale had smelled death before in the years of his work and his life. More times than any person should ever have to. But knowing a smell does not protect you from it. It just means you recognize it faster and your stomach reacts accordingly. He untied the handkerchief from his vest pocket and knotted it around his mouth and nose like a man planning a robbery, which was not entirely inaccurate given his general plan for the evening. It did a poor job of filtering the stench, but it was enough to keep his eyes from tearing up. He kept moving. His flashlight caught the walls on both sides and he stopped. Silk. Fine and almost invisible at first, threading itself between the rock surfaces in delicate patterns, then thickening as he went deeper, building into broad sheets across the walls, spreading across the ceiling, winding down onto the floor in dense overlapping layers. He had passed half a dozen long shapes pressed against the walls and half buried in the silk floor before he understood that they were not boulders. He crouched beside one and peeled the outer silk back with the barrel of the shotgun. Beneath it was a face, or what had been a face. Mummified and collapsed and hollowed out, the skin dried to leather and pulled tight against the skull, the eye sockets deep and empty. The kind of dried-out, wrung-out look of something that had been drained completely dry rather than allowed to decay in the normal way of things. An NFL cap sat on the collapsed skull, the team logo still visible in the flashlight beam. Dale tapped the skull with the barrel of the shotgun. The jaw cracked open. A spider the size of his open hand crawled out from the desiccated throat and moved across the silk floor without acknowledging him. Dale stood back up. He swept the flashlight slowly around the mine passage. They were everywhere, moving across the silk-covered bodies in the walls, moving across the ceiling, moving across the floor. None larger than his palm. Their fangs pumped steadily as they fed, methodical and unhurried, working through their meals with the patience of something that has never once been interrupted at dinner. His blood began to boil in the particular way it did when he was confronted with something that had no business existing. He turned on his heel and walked deeper into the mine, adjusting the placement of each step so that it came down with maximum deliberate force on whatever was beneath it. He called Sandra's name into the darkness ahead. It came back to him in layers, her name bouncing off walls he could not see, arriving back at him from half a dozen different directions at once. He checked every wrapped shape he passed, peeling back silk with the barrel to check for anything still breathing beneath it. None of them were breathing. The spiders were growing more numerous with every 20 feet he covered, dropping from the ceiling onto his arms and shoulders in ones and twos, forcing him to brush them off without breaking stride. He was making the calculation about whether to turn back when his flashlight caught a metallic glint on the dirt floor ahead. He moved toward it. A smartphone lay face down in the dirt. Beside it, a hand, still, palm up. He followed the arm upward to a silk-wrapped body suspended from the ceiling, enough strands torn loose that one arm had fallen free and hung there in the dark. He pulled at the silk around the torso. Large block letters printed across the front of the girl's t-shirt underneath. American Idol. He pressed 2 fingers to the side of her neck. Nothing. He held them there and counted. Still nothing. He reached down and picked up the phone. A name was printed on the protective case in clean block letters. Sandra Cleveland. Dale stood still in the dark for a long moment. He listened to the sound of the mine around him, the faint movements of things feeding in the walls, the deep, cold silence underneath all of it. "I am sorry, Sandra," he said quietly. "Just not quick enough." He crushed the spiders he found on her one at a time, deliberately and without hurry, until there were none left on her. Then he heard the engines outside, at least 2 of them, growing louder. He wiped his boots in the dirt, turned around and started back toward the entrance at a jog. His jaw was set. His mind was already past the mine and past the dead girl and past everything down here in the dark. Time to go deal with the driver of the red spider, whatever that turned out to mean. He reached the mouth of the mine and pulled himself back up into the cold night air. The first thing he saw was a teenage boy, barely old enough to need a razor, wearing an oversized tracksuit and a cap with the bill turned all the way backward, with a quantity of gold chains around his neck that seemed to have been applied with no upper limit in mind. He was dancing beside a modified Honda Civic with a chrome supercharger rising from the hood like a chrome crown, celebrating at high volume in the direction of a red Alfa Romeo Spider idling a short distance away. "Beat you. Beat you fair and square. Come on out and let us see your losing face." The Alfa Romeo just sat there, engine purring, black-tinted windows admitting nothing. Dale crouched behind a pile of excavated rock just outside the mine entrance and watched. There was something about that car that raised every hair on the back of his neck simultaneously and held them there. A chill moved through him that had nothing to do with the temperature. Still and patient in the dark, the Alfa Romeo did not feel like a car. It felt like something waiting. The engine revved once, low and deliberate. The teenager took 2 involuntary steps backward. Then the hard-top roof of the Alfa Romeo began to move. A high-pitched mechanical whine accompanied it as the roof folded and retracted slowly backward along its channels, like the opening of something that should have stayed closed. It came to rest flat on the trunk. The machinery that moved it cut out with a sound like a held breath being released. Silence. The teenager stepped forward. He said the word "sick" with the admiration of someone who genuinely could not conceive yet of the range of things that word could apply to. Out of the open car, a head began to rise. Long black hair so dark it seemed less like hair and more like an extension of the night itself. A slender, pale neck emerging below it. Smooth, naked shoulders. Her hands came up and gripped the top of the windshield from the inside. The teenager smiled at her. The woman smiled back. black lips, white teeth. She continued to rise, higher than the car's frame should have allowed for. The teenager's smile held right up until the exact moment it did not, because there was more of her than there should have been. Another set below the first, and another below that. Row upon row of them descending the full length of her torso in a column that ended somewhere below the line of the car door, each one gray and swollen. The teenager took a step back. He said something quiet and profane. Then the legs came, 8 of them, long and thick and heavily furred, each one the girth of a large snake, uncoiling from the interior of the Alfa Romeo with the slow, deliberate patience of something that has slept for a very long time and is in no hurry now that it is awake. One by one they found the ground. The creature lifted itself free of the car and rose to its full height. From the waist up, a woman. From the waist down, an arachnid, its 8 jointed and hair-covered legs planting themselves in the California dirt and holding her black compound eyes at least 8 feet above the ground. She turned those eyes on the teenage boy. He did not run. His body had made a different decision without consulting him. She scurried forward with a speed that made the word impossible come to mind, and then immediately leave it. Her front legs rose and closed around the boy and lifted him off the ground. Silk shot from the rear of her body in thick, continuous ropes, and within a very few seconds the boy was mummified from the neck down, cocooned and hanging from her grip, ready for later. She turned and began to move toward the mine, her wrapped prize dragging behind her in the dirt. Dale pressed himself flat behind the rocks, gripping the shotgun stock so hard his hands ached. She stopped at the mine entrance, lowered her human torso toward the ground. Her hands found something in the dirt and lifted it. Dale's rope. Her head came back up, black eyes following the length of the rope to where it was tied to his truck. Something moved behind those eyes. Not anger, concern. The specific concern of something that has just understood that someone has been inside its home. She sniffed the air, turned her head back toward the opening. She released the teenager. His cocooned body rolled down the slope and disappeared. She descended back into the mine. Dale let out a long, trembling breath that he had been holding for so long his ribs hurt. He stood up from behind the rocks and started moving quietly toward the truck cab. He was going to get inside, get up high, get his angles right, wait for Earl. He was reaching for the door handle when a chirping sound tore through the silence of the desert night like an alarm going off in a library. He spun toward the sound. It followed him. He spun back. Goddamn phone. He dug it from his back pocket and mashed buttons with a thumb that was not entirely steady until the screen lit up and the sound stopped. From deep inside the mine, a scream erupted into the night. Part human, part something that had never been human. Echoing up the mine shaft and across the dark California hills and into every quiet place around them. Dale, you there? Earl's voice, small and tinny out of the phone speaker. Dale stared at the mine entrance. Eyeshine caught the edge of his flashlight beam from far below, moving upward, moving fast. He held the phone in front of his face. A big one, he said, a real big one. He threw the phone into the mine and watched it bounce off the creature's chest on its way up. He stepped back, planted both feet in the dirt, gripped the shotgun at his hip, and waited for her to come out. She emerged from the mine like something being born from the earth itself. One leg first, then another, then the torso unfolding to its full height in the thin moonlight, her human hands balled into fists, her black eyes locked on Dale with an expression that required no translation. She stood completely still for a moment, hissing low and steady in the back of whatever she had for a throat, sizing him up the way a fighter sizes up an opponent before the opening bell. Dale rotated slowly with her, keeping both barrels aimed at the center of her chest. He judged the distance between them at about 15 feet, just beyond the effective kill range of the shotgun. Not ideal. The hissing continued, low and rhythmic and deeply unpleasant. It reminded him, in a way he found genuinely troubling, of his ex-wife at her most focused. "My God," he said, "you are 500 pounds of ugly." She began to circle him, hairy legs leaving deep impressions in the dirt. The hiss changed pitch. "Well," he said quietly, "if this is how it goes, let us dance." She lowered her human head toward her chest like a bull dropping its horns, thrust both hands forward, and charged. Dale counted to 2 in his head, held his breath, and let go with both barrels. The twin explosions lit the mine entrance in a white flash and rolled out across the dark California hills in overlapping waves. The creature pitched backward, her hands flying to her chest. When they dropped away, one portion of her upper torso was simply gone, and an arm hung connected by something that would not hold for long. Blood ran down what remained of her and spread across the fur of her legs. She thrust her remaining hand forward and clawed at the air in front of her, more enraged than incapacitated. Dale moved backward fast, reaching into his vest pocket for shells. He had to look down for 1 second to find them. 1 second. A hairy leg struck him across the jaw with the force of something mechanical. His feet left the ground completely. He was in the air for what felt like a very long time and then landed hard on something that bent inward under his weight and kept bending. The hood of the Alfa Romeo. He lay on it for a stunned second, staring up at the California night sky, feeling the warm spread of something across the back of his skull. Her shadow fell over him. She rose on her back legs above the hood of the car, teeth showing, the ruins of her upper body still dripping steadily onto the metal below him. Dale pointed the shotgun in her general direction and pulled both triggers. The softest and most completely dreadful sound in the world came back to him. The flat click of hammers falling on empty chambers. Nothing in them, nothing left. He sat up fast and dug into his pocket for the last shells. Her remaining hand closed around his neck and lifted him off the hood of the car as though he weighed nothing of consequence. She pulled his face toward hers, opened her mouth wide. He could smell her breath from an inch away. Rot. Age. Something that had been eating in the dark since before anyone living had been born. And then her grip changed, loosened. Her eyes moved past him. Something out in the dark had caught her attention. He brought both fists down as hard as he could on her wounded arm. She made a sound he had no word for. Her grip opened. He dropped back onto the hood of the Alfa Romeo and heard his own head connect with the metal. The sound in the distance had been growing for several seconds without him registering it through everything else. Now it registered. A roar. Engines. Multiple. A horn. A familiar horn. Growing from a sound to a physical presence in his chest. Dale rolled off the hood of the Alfa Romeo onto the dirt just as Earl's 18-wheeler came out of the dark at full speed, with every light blazing and the horn going continuously, the entire front of it aimed like a declaration of intent. Dale rolled in the dirt and kept rolling as the trailer rushed past him, close enough to feel the displacement of air against his face. The crash that followed was loud enough to feel in the teeth. Metal folded. Sparks erupted across the lot in long trailing arcs, like something celebratory. Earl's truck drove the Alfa Romeo and everything standing between it and the rocky excavation hill straight into that hill and did not stop until it was part of it. The creature was pinned somewhere in the middle of all of it. Her legs broken and bent at wrong angles around the crumpled frame of the car. Her human torso draped over the rocky hill. Two legs at the far edges of the wreckage still moved in slow and weakening arcs. The engine of Earl's truck ticked over in the sudden silence. Then the cab door opened and Earl stepped down. He was a few inches taller than Dale and several pounds heavier, and he looked at the scene in front of him with the calm expression of a man surveying a parking lot he needs to back into. "Took you long enough," Dale said from the dirt. "You never did appreciate a proper entrance." Earl walked over and extended a hand. Dale grabbed it and was pulled upright. Earl tilted his head at the wreckage and the thing pinned inside it. "You sure do have a way of finding the meanest and ugliest things." "It is a gift," Dale said. He loaded his last two shells into the chambers and walked toward the rocky hill. "Well," Earl said behind him, "you ought to think seriously about giving it back." Dale climbed up the hill to where her head lay over the top. Black hair spread out in the pale dirt, like something that had spilled and could not be cleaned up. She tried to lift her head when she heard his boots. Dale set a boot on her hair and pressed it down. She looked up at him with those black eyes, all the fury in them gone now. Something else in its place that he had no more wish to read than he had wished to find it. She hissed. Blood spotted the denim over his shins. Dale looked at her for a long and quiet moment. In the end, he had never been able to hate these things. Not completely, not truly. It was just an unnatural thing doing what unnatural things were assembled to do. That was not wickedness. That was just nature going badly off the script. But it was time now for this particular piece of nature to close. He leaned down, placed both barrels flat against her forehead. "Say goodnight," he said. He pulled the trigger. And that is Dale. A man who drives through the dark, finds things no one else finds, and does what needs doing without drama, without hesitation, and without losing his appetite for a proper breakfast afterward. Some people are just built that way. If this one got your blood moving tonight, drop a comment below and tell me where you are watching from. Whether you are watching from Lagos or London, from Accra or Atlanta, from somewhere in the middle of a dark, quiet night where you have already turned every light in the room on and are rethinking the ones in the hallway, say hello, drop your city, drop your country. Tell me you made it to the end. I read every single one. If you have not yet subscribed to DreadRelic, do it right now. Hit that subscribe button. Ring the notification bell. Every single week we go somewhere darker than the week before, and I would genuinely hate for you to miss what is coming next. And if this story found the part of you that still checks the back seat before you get in the car at night, tap the like button. It helps more than you know, and it tells me you want more of this. Until next time, sleep well if you can.